So I'm happy to finally present my talk with Jake, which hopefully it hasn't been edited yet. Hopefully will pass my expectations. Is that the
I
is
have
that the
different words, but okay.
um and the reason why, and I'll just briefly say it again, and I said it in front of Alex, it's just only because I want to do service to the guests that I have on and just try to present the best podcast, the best sound that could be done, but also the most authentic. So there's been cases where I've completely messed up because I'm not good at this. I've messed up vocals and recordings for almost every podcast I've recorded so far. And Desmond has fixed or attempted to fix almost every podcast I've recorded so far. I don't know what I've done to deserve a good friend like you.
Well, I'm quite hopeful that today's is just perfect.
Easy? Yeah, I think it's going to be easy.
However, I'm not naive, so I am expecting.
It was funny because Mitch asked me, like, he was talking to me about my World of Warcraft play. Like, how do I play? Do I quest and just kind of wander and explore? Because there's so much you could do if you're not familiar with World of Warcraft, and you're not a gamer, so you don't understand these things. I mean, and that's not saying it in a
Patronizing.
mean, it's not saying it in a mean way, but I was just trying to say that you might not understand these things, but if you go into um, World of Warcraft, and World of Warcraft is, do you know what an MMORPG is?
Let me just PG's play a game, role play a game, MMOR.
Massively multiplayer, massive multi online role playing game, which means that you would embody the character that you play. That's kind of you. And I've been playing World of Warcraft since like 2008. So that's been quite a while. And I've been through many battles. So you get like different titles. And like I'm a veteran of different battles and things like that. It gives you clout, right? But you could do different things. You can just kind of like explore the world. It's like sandbox. You can just kind of explore. You can quest if you want to quest. You can do one-on-one. You can join brawls. You could do battlegrounds, which are like quick. Sometimes it's like 5 against 5. Sometimes it's a little more where you just play the other. There's like two factions, the Horde and the Alliance, and so they play each other in these like quick games. Or you can do raids, which are like bigger, like 20 against 20. There's so many different things that you could do, and that's why I love it, because depending on what my mood is, I might play different things. But in battlegrounds and in raids, I used to always tank. And as a tank, you fight the boss. You control the boss. You taunt the boss. You try to get the boss to attack you, and then you've got behind you your DPS people, which is damage per second people, and you've got ranged, or you've got melee, and then you've got your healers in the third row. But usually people that play tank, and I don't think that I would offend any people that played tank in the past. I'm not saying I play tank now, but in the past I used to. I would say that tanks are probably a little bit of control freaks. So you have no comment, right?
I don't think I need any comment. Is there an option in these games for everyone to just get along? Is it always fighting and battling, or can everyone just say, right,
No, you know what was really cool?
let's just play some football or watch some TV?
When I was pregnant with my son, I was hospitalized for like several months. I had a really difficult pregnancy, and so I had nothing to do. So I was playing World of Warcraft a lot. And at the time, I was in Bangkok, but I was originally on a US server. So there was usually, when I was on playing, there was like nobody on. Nobody on my guild was on. There wasn't a lot of players on. And sometimes I had a really hard time just kind of competing something while I was leveling up. And usually I play Horde, and usually if you ran into Alliance and you can't communicate, which is interesting, Alliance and Horde cannot communicate with one another. Like you can't sit there and if you see a Alliance coming, you can't say stuff to them.
I thought you said
You
something
can't
else. That's
insult
all.
them. You can't insult them. However, you can do other things, like you could spit. Like it's really funny. You could say, you could tag their screen name and just say like, you spit in their general direction. Very Monty Python. I spit in your general direction. which is funny. But there's been time, like there's really actually really cool people on there. Obviously, there's lots of cool people on there that'll help you out. Sometimes I'm playing and I'm in a zone, and as I'm leveling up my character, I'm too low of a character. I keep getting killed, and I might just broadcast on the channel, is there anybody out there that can help me do this and this quest? And people come. So it's, I mean, obviously, like with anything, there's going to be jerks on there. There's going to be people that are just mean spirited, which I don't know
So,
why.
so
Like, I
wait,
don't know why
when you
you'd
put
be
out
mean
this
spirited.
SOS saying "I'm struggling, please help," do you ever get people just coming in and finishing you off, or is it
No,
always?
it's never happened. It's never happened. Um, but okay, but there's something, I remember there was something that happened. I think it was maybe 14, 15 years ago. And it was kind of awful, but it was kind of funny at the same time. And that's what I love about the World of Warcraft community, is that there's snarkiness, there is some mean spiritedness, but there's sometimes things that are funny. So there was a player, and a World of Warcraft player, and the player passed away. And I don't know if it was their guild organized it, but they said that we were going to meet. And the world is massive. The world is massive, and there's gorgeous, gorgeous places in the world. And they said that they were going to go meet at this one particular area in the game that player had loved to go fishing. Like you could go, and you could, sometimes in the game you have to fish if you want to get certain achievements, cooking achievements. So they would go there and fish, and they liked it. And so they kind of organized, it was going to be like an online memorial service, for this person. And I thought that that was really lovely. And it got advertised like on everything. And so there's a lot of people showed up to this thing. Tons and tons of players came and showed up for this memorial. And then all of a sudden, coming down the mountain was a group that decided that they were just going to attack this whole memorial group. And everyone was fighting, and you could just see that the text, like people are like, what's going on? I can't believe this is happening. But it was I watched it again and again. I don't know if that makes me a bad person.
I think it's just like real life. In real life, you have nice people who go out of their way to make a nice memorial, and then you have those. What did you call them? Mountain descenders.
But you know what? If I was that person that had passed, I couldn't think of a better way, because that's like, you can go on
Yeah.
YouTube right now and go see World of Warcraft. I'll actually put it on the Sayonara Cupcake Cantina site. I'll put that particular thing on. Um, I think that I would want it. That's how I would want it. Some kind of
Yeah.
like epic battle at my memorial / online funeral,
Well, it is.
where
It's a bit.
everybody's just fighting each other.
Well, it's a bit of everything. It starts off nice, and everyone goes fishing, and then this whole tribe of brutes that comes down the mountain, and a big fight erupts. Wow, that's a
I I think it actually is like really cool. And like if you go, I'm sure if you go and looked it up now, there's like probably millions of views. So
yeah.
who's to say that that was the wrong way to end that memorial?
Nobody. It's
I'm I'm all for like I'm all for just, I think that people should just be cool to one another. Like just in general, just be cool. We're all on the same planet. Let's just be cool. However, I am a
I knew
fan.
that was coming.
However, I am a fan of sometimes people stirring things up. Not in a mean, like where somebody's like, you know, going to be
Yeah.
hurt by it. But people stirring stuff up,
You mean by spitting in their general direction?
spitting in their general direction. But no, like I like to stir stuff up with, my family. I like to stir stuff up with my son. I like to stir stuff up with you. I like to stir stuff up. Um,
But I think the people with whom you do that also do it with you.
yeah,
It's mutual.
I know a lot of instigators.
Yeah. I think that's an art form, being able to use people's words against them, or to change it so it makes those people question what and why they're doing what they're doing.
Yes, which is different than when people change narratives.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's why I'm
When people
saying it.
change narratives and give false lies and change stories, that's not
No,
cool.
no, and that's not smart. To just try and redirect or rephrase or give a new narrative to something which is clearly false is beyond stupid.
Especially when there's abundance of evidence.
I think abundance is an understatement.
Especially when there's abundance of evidence, I think it's stupid to try to change narratives or just completely lie
It's
these
foolish.
days. It's so easy to get for people to get caught in lies these
It
days.
is. It is.
So why do it? Just be cool. Just be cool. Um, have some integrity, like we try to do here at Sayonara Cupcake.
Yep.
We try to give authentic broadcasts, and I think that, and I do have to say thank you to Desmond because I do joke around with you a lot, but and a lot of people, honestly, like my mother, she already said she would have quit if it was her. Um, a lot of people would not be happy with the number of times that I'm like, no, I'm not happy. I'm not happy with it because I'm really at the mercy of Desmond because I'm not an audio person. I'm not an engineer person. Um, my son says I am good at Japanese. He says I'm fluent in Japanese, but I'm not good at the technical stuff. And a lot of people, but I do have an idea of what I'm trying to present.
Yeah.
And if I didn't have somebody that was as patient as Desmond in my corner, um, yeah, I couldn't get it done. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, I am learning a lot on this on the job internship, and the comments about
Unpaid.
your unpaid. And the comment you just made about your mother saying, I don't know why he still does it. That's part of the answer. To
It's a
confuse,
challenge.
to challenge her, to confuse her. And so she can't say, oh, I told you he'd quit. I would have
She
quit.
was asking my son last night, which I found funny, and he came and reported on me. He goes, "She doesn't understand." She said, "I don't understand why people listen to other people talking." She's like, "I don't get it." She's like, "Why is anybody listening to her? Why would anybody listen to her?" People are talking about music. They like talking about music. She goes, "I don't understand it." But then he pointed out she listens to news, talking heads on news.
Yeah.
And that's the thing a lot of people do. And it's not necessarily, and I've heard a lot of people say that they have news or something on in the background just as white noise, especially
Yeah.
people that live alone, because they said it just kind of feels like somebody's there. But if you have that on as night, white noise, but you're listening to something that's so negative, and it seems like news is so negative these days. They're just reporting everything wrong in the world and not necessarily everything right, that I think that it can affect your moods, your energy, all that kind of stuff. So here is a alternative. You can listen to people yapping. Well, other people don't yap. It's just me yapping, but people talking about music or just talking about positive things.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I was watching, I can't remember his name. I should know. Basically, he was saying that DNA is related to music and how the music you were listening to when you were growing up, if you hear it again, it makes your DNA vibrate, and that's why people react to it. And he's got this new way of looking at physics and mathematics, which puts everything into into waves and into music.
Yeah.
He I can't remember the details, but for example, he said a hydrogen atom is in the key of E major or something. It's quite fascinating.
But there's like so many of these different astrophysicists, Michio Kaku, Stephen Hawking, all talked about like string theories and vibrations and stuff. And I mean, isn't that what music is? It's just different vibrations.
Yeah,
Sound is vibrations. And so I think it's cool in the sense of putting anything out. Sound recordings is kind of cool because there's a record of it. It's there. It's getting transmitted. Um, it's out there in the cosmos.
yeah. And I think all this studying, all this astrophysics, all this advanced theory, and we just needed to listen to that one Beach Boys song, "Good Vibrations." That's Doesn't that sum everything up?
Yeah. Did you see the movie? It was with John Cusack, um, and he was playing Brian Wilson. It was such a great movie, but they kind of implied that Good Vibrations was written about the dog. Like he was looking at the dog was happy. Love and Mercy. It was a great film. Love and Mercy. Okay, I'm gonna go on this John Cusack thing only because I mentioned Love and Mercy. Did you find that I always found that John Cusack, like whatever movie, it seemed like most every movie that John Cusack was in seemed to have a great soundtrack to that movie.
Yeah, yeah,
A lot of people don't know that he's like a huge music fan as well, so that's kind of cool. Um, I think that there's so many actors and actresses out there that are huge music fans, and that's really cool when they kind of champion and put music or want to have certain soundtracks, because of that. One of my favorite people is director Sofia Coppola. Um, and I remember reading somewhere sometime that she said that when she's writing her screenplays, that a lot of the music that she has put into the screenplay she was hearing at the time that she was like writing this screenplay, like she could already envision it. So like for example, Lost in Translation, she said that a lot of those songs, like as she was writing a certain part of it, like that's the song she heard in her head. And I thought
yeah,
that's really cool to then bring that out too. And I think that's a little bit of inspiration for this podcast as well, of having the extra bonus playlist of things that we talk about. It's like I want to bring that to light too, because there's so many good bands that people might not have heard of or have yet to discover.
yeah. No, it's a definite rabbit hole for people to fall down,
Yeah.
and with the algorithm these days, they'll go into the playlist, which will lead to more playlists, which will lead to more playlists. It's
Yeah.
never ending.
I mean, Spotify, I've talked about it in several times on almost everything, because I know that some people have a love hate thing with Spotify, and I get it. But without that, there's so much music I wouldn't have heard um, and discovered. Some of my favorite bands lately, Surf Curse, Adult Books, The Drums, Lola Young, which I keep plugging. I love Lola Young. Um, but I wouldn't have Phaser Days out of New Zealand. She's got a great album, but I wouldn't have found all those without the enhanced playlist. So like if you make a playlist in Spotify, and you have like 20 songs, you can hit enhanced and the algorithm finds music that you might like that's similar to that. And so that's how I discover like a lot of new stuff, which is really cool. So while, there's issues with Spotify in terms of how they compensate artists, there is
Mhm.
also a good thing. And if somebody can show me a better way to discover music, because I don't have my neighbor that lives down the street from me walking home with me with a Walkman anymore going, oh, listen to this.
Yeah,
I don't have that anymore. So if there's other ways to discover music, whether it's sometimes it's on an Instagram reel, a lot of times I discover music that way, where somebody's reposted something or added something, and I'll go and I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. That song sounds cool. And I go and add it. how are ways that you're discovering music in
I think
these modern times?
um, I think in similar ways, the enhanced playlists on Spotify. I think the white noise is something. I don't have the news on in the background, but I have YouTube Music or Spotify in the background, and
Yeah.
you know, without, I mean, I'm obviously hearing it, but I'm not listening to it. But there will be times when there's a bit of a reaction. I think, wow, what's this? So
I'm
I've
much
tried.
more mindful. Have you noticed I've been better? I haven't
Yeah,
bumped.
yeah. I think
I'm
those.
getting better with each podcast. So I have Jake Najor again. And Jake, you're super awesome for coming back and doing this. As everybody knows, I keep ruining all the podcast because of my inexperience with mics and cables. And um, I see the looks that you're throwing over Desmond, the shade. Jake is one of my favorite people. I absolutely adore you, Jake. I love you so much. And I really wanted you on here. You were one of the first people I thought of because, and I've told you this before, I can't think of a band that you haven't played with, jammed with, filled in for. You can play 6 Degrees of Jake Najor and probably find something that he's done something with. Some of the bands to mention: Big Daddy Kane. You've worked with TV on the Radio, Empire of the Sun, Kellis, Joss Stone, um, Rebecca Jade, so many different bands, and currently with the Surefire Solo Ensemble. And I'm obsessed with this one track, Love Age. I love it
Oh
so much.
wow, that's one of my favorites too.
Yeah, it's a great track. So
Yeah,
thank you, Jake, for coming back on here,
yeah, no problem.
fresh off the plane.
Yeah.
So Jake, you know what this podcast is about. Like, I like talking to people about what was their musical journey, like what was the, the first kind of beginnings of how their musical journey started. And especially with somebody like you that has such musical diversity, and not just what you listen to, because I happen to know you, but also what you play,
hmm
and maybe trying to find out if it was those early influences of you that kind of led you down that path.
Going back to the beginning, I have two older brothers that played music. One 7 years older than me, and the other's four. So I think when I was about 7 or 8, we rented a marimba from Allen's Music in La Mesa, and I
Yeah.
was, I was doing it, but I kind of, as a kid, like you lose interest quick. You think you want to do something. So it wasn't until about ninth grade, because my brother Zach is a drummer, so there was always drums in the house. I would just kind of tinker around on them, and I was really getting into music at that point. Before that, I was kind of more into sports. Like I played basketball, but I was like, I'm never gonna be that good. So I was like, kind of ready to do something else. So I got a kit, um, but I was still just kind of tinkering around. I mean, it was fun, but you know, what I wanted to do, I wanted to be in a band, you know, I wanted to play with people. Drums was fun, but I felt like I want to be a band guy. So in 11th grade, I went to a pretty small, like private school, and we had a pep band finally. So me being pretty much the only drummer around, I was the guy. So
Yeah.
I did that, and then it was like a Christian school, so like I played like worship, and that was actually like a class. So I was getting it's pretty much how I graduated high school, I think, just because of the music classes. Uh,
So it's kind of like
so
School of Rock, right?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it was kind of similar. Like we learned, we learned how to play in a band. Our teacher, was a guitar player, and he played in bands. And he was fairly young, so he was like somewhat hip. Like he knew. good music. He wasn't just this kind of like stuffy old music guy that's like, just out of touch. Like he knew what we were trying to do. So he would just kind of guide us. And so after about a year of us playing together, we're like, well, we want to start our own band. Like, we want to write songs. And he had a connection with this band POD, who I'm sure you remember.
Yeah.
And he got us to open for them at Soma. And it was on the small, like the side stage, and it was packed. And then we did it again. And then finally we got to play like on the main stage. So that was pretty dang cool. Like, when you're in
Yeah.
your first band, you're playing a huge place,
Soma.
especially Soma back then. That was
Yeah.
like, especially for like underage, obviously,
Yeah.
like we weren't gonna play Casbah. None of us were old enough. I mean, none of our friends could go. So after that, I graduated, and the band kind of like the singer. I think after a while he quit, and then the band just kind of fell apart. At first I was kind of bummed, because it was like, oh man, this is the band, and then just because I knew a lot of people, that band Switchfoot was kind of just getting started, and I met a couple of their friends, and we started a band called Lamont, and we just started playing like everywhere. It was just crazy. Like we kind of had a unique sound for the time, and we were just playing
Yeah.
everywhere. And then from there, I just was meeting so many musicians. And like some people knew me because of my brother, because he's in Gray Boys, so like they like recognize me and stuff. So I
And
was
if
kind of
people
getting
didn't
my
know, Grey Boy is Grey Boy All Stars.
Gray Boy All Stars. Yeah, should clarify that. Uh, so I just was meeting, when you do things, when you're out there in the public, just like how I met you later, like you just meet people. You meet people at
Yeah.
shows, and you play with other bands, and people hear you play, and then like you start you get calls. You go, hey, my band needs a drummer, or like so I
Yeah.
think it's like really important, if you want to be a musician, is just to play. Never stop, even if it's a band that might just be okay or whatever. If you're out there and you're playing, like people are gonna hear it, and you're gonna get like noticed. So just do the best that you can. Put yourself out there. Try to be, as cool as you can, and
How did it feel? You did all that. I saw you do all that. Just play, play, play. Um, and you were part of a group, an effort, a work effort that ended up with a Grammy nomination. And how's that feel? Does that kind of feel like all that hard work was finally recognized?
Yeah, for sure. It was definitely like I never thought
I mean,
that
it,
would.
and it's also cool because not only that, having that, that kind of nod from peers in the
Mhm.
industry, which is, you know, a lot of people have a lot of different things to say about Grammys, or like, oh, it's not fair, this or that. But at the end of the day, it's still a nod from your
Yeah,
peers, which is nothing to sneeze at. But and I was wondering about this. I wonder, where do you keep all those awards that you get, San Diego Music Awards, year after year for this band, that band? What do you do with them all?
well, since they only give one, like I have a couple. I don't have like all of them, but I have two that it's cool to have like in the house.
I didn't know that. So they don't give like an individual one to each person in the band.
No, they just give one to the band, so you kind of gotta like fight for it. Like, but
Yeah,
not
share
the
it.
bands have had one multiple times, so it's like, oh, you could have this one this time.
That's cool. That's really cool. Yeah. Um, do you remember what was the first album you bought with your own money?
I think it was Flock of Seagulls. It was like a 45, like I ran so far away, that track.
And you went through, like you said, a Billy Idol phase.
Yeah, like I liked, new wave. I guess you would call that, right? Or is he
Yeah.
good? what is he considered? Is he considered new wave?
See, I still kind of, because he came from Gen X and stuff, I kind of still think of him as
Like punk?
punk. Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
It's weird when, if people were to ask me, what do I think of Blondie? I'm like, I kind of think they're a punk band, but not punk in the sense that a lot of people think of punk. A lot of people think of punk as, fast Sex Pistol music, but I kind of think of punk as being a movement as well, um, a frame of mind, a time period, all that kind of stuff. For me, that's how I kind of viewed it. So I think Billy Idol's a punk. I think he
Yes.
would say he was a punk.
Billy Idol, and then let's see, like Devo. They're obviously like new wave.
Love Devo.
But also because I had older siblings, like I heard at a young age, Iron Maiden, Black Flag, Circle Jerks, Metallica, Rush,
Yeah.
like some hip hop. Like I think later I got into like Run DMC. I like wore that cassette out.
Yeah.
Um, I also was later on like In Excess when that album Kick came out. I was
Oh,
like
Kick was a great
super.
album.
It had so many hits on it, and then
Yeah.
it was a weird stage where I was like, wasn't I was into music, but I wasn't like obsessed
Yeah.
because I was kind of more into the sports thing. Like
Hmm.
I would watch like Sports Center like religiously, you know. But I think once I got out of like going into high school was when music kind of became more of my identity. I was like, yeah, I'm into music. Like I'm a this is my thing, you know. Like that's when you kind of start to like form who you are as a person. You know, you're like I'm into
Yeah.
music, or you know, you're a jock, or you're a academic club guy,
Yeah.
or whatever, you're, preppy guy. So
Did you find when you were in high school and kind of about music, did you have friends that came and brought you stuff, brought you a tape and say, "Oh, you got to listen to this"?
I did in 10th grade. My good friend Jesse, I'm still friends with. He introduced me to a lot of the East Coast like hardcore, like Youth of Today and Judge. This band called Burn, like Citizen, all these like really underground, like kind of Che Cafe
Yeah.
bands of like Born Against. So I mean, I knew some of the local bands, but I didn't really know like that scene at all. So I kind of really like, I got into that for a while. Like that was kind of
Yeah.
exciting. You know, you would buy like the 45, the 7-inch, and
Yeah.
I would buy like Maximum Rock and Roll, that Z, because
Yeah.
for me it was a new, like I didn't know a lot of this stuff. Like I was learning. That's right when I was like trying to play like in a band. So it's like they teach you how to book a show, book a tour, and it's DIY. There's no label. Just that whole thing, and
Do you
he did
think that
like showed me a lot of stuff. So,
do you think that that was one of the biggest ways that you discovered music? Was it through friends? Was it through radio, through your siblings?
um, So, like 91X, they still have that show Loudspeaker, which I would
Yeah.
listen to every week. And that's like when I was learning about like the local music scene.
Yeah.
And so that's how I learned about like Rocket from the Crypt, Drive Like Jehu, Fluff, Inch, 3 Mile Pilot, because that was a big, back then we were kind of compared to like the Seattle music scene, like we were supposed to be
Yeah.
the next big
Yeah.
things. All these bands, I was discovering, and then like they would play all age shows. So I would
Yeah.
go to their shows, and I actually turned a lot of my friends on to those bands. Like I
Yeah.
just like Rocket and
Do you, I think like for me, and I had different friends that liked different music. And I remember I had my friend, I called him Big Ron. He lived out in like El Cajon, La Mesa, but he'd always like take me to the Soma shows or to be like, hey, we're going to go tonight and see this band called Shot Out Hoods. And I'm like, what's it about? He's like, it's loud. You'll like it. We'd go to see these like shows all the time. But I remember he'd come and he'd like put a sticker on my car. It said Primus sucks. I'm like, what, why are you putting that? He's like, it means they're good. I'm like, then why do you have a sticker that says it sucks? He's like, it's just what it is. Just leave it there. But
Right.
it was like those kind of friends that told you, I discovered music that I wouldn't have listened to by having different friends that listen to different things. Did you find that your parents, obviously, your brother's in a band, your sister Mia's in a band, Witchface, and obviously music has been such a big part of your family. How much of that was with the support of your family? I mean, was mom and dad just like saying, here, you guys want a guitar? Do you want that? How did that go?
Yeah, they're still supportive to this day, but yeah, just, they're like, oh, is that what you want to do? Like, cool, like, go for it. Like, they were never like, no, what are you doing? Like, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, they were never like, oh, you're crazy. Why would you think that? I think, because my parents were like hippies, I think they kind of had a little of that free spirit, like, they
Yeah.
didn't want how their parents were like strict, so.
Their pictures, and I don't know if you want to share a picture. And I'll totally share a picture because for every podcast, there's also like it's called the Sayonara Cupcake Cantina, which has got news, links to Bandcamp and stuff. But your parents look so fabulous. Like back in the day, you've shared pictures. I'm like, they look so cool.
Yeah,
Your
and
dad looks so cool.
they lived in like a hippie commune in like Humboldt, and they were really doing it back then, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously kind of moved on from that pretty quick, but
Yeah.
they went through that.
When I had Mitch Wilson from No Knife on here the other day, he had lovely things to say about you, but he brought up something, and now it's completely messing with my head because I don't know if it's a false memory or if it's something I've seen, but I've heard the urban legend, or I've seen a picture of you drumming under a bridge, San Diego.
Yeah,
True or not true?
Qualcomm Way.
Is true.
Yeah,
I may have seen a picture then. Maybe I've seen a picture
you've
because I
seen
was like, I totally forgot about it.
and you some. I have pictures.
Oh no!
I might even have like video somewhere.
And they seen like I totally forgot about it. He brought it up, and I'm like, I've either heard about it or I've seen a picture, but it totally rings a bell. That's awesome.
Yeah, unfortunately, they all the lanes go through it now, so we can't do it
You can't
anymore.
do it anymore.
There's other spots where you can do it. It's just that was a famous spot that a lot of guys have been doing that for years, like way before me. Like I remember when I first started playing drums, me and my brother and a couple of his friends like set up kits. I mean, this is like 30 years ago, probably.
Yeah,
And that
yeah.
was the first time I'd ever heard about it. And then periodically over the years, I would just be like, hey, I'm going to go set up under the bridge. Who wants to join me? And like other
Did
drummers
you?
would show up.
And they just all drum together. So it was just
Mhm.
kind of a different kind of a San Diego drum circle.
Yeah. A little bit
For people,
cooler.
San Diego, for people that don't know, San Diego, obviously it's a beach town, but I always hear about, you'd always hear the kind of hippie people like in San Diego going, are you going down to OB for the drum circle? It's like, what?
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? It's
Don't
usually
go.
people from Leucadia, like people from Leucadia, are you going down to OB for the drum circle?
Yeah, I'm
What you've been able to tour with a lot of different bands, go to a lot of different places. What was the most fun tour you've ever had?
probably when we went to Japan back in 2012.
Yeah.
I'd never been there before, and just like the reverence that they have.
Yeah.
Like at first, it was like quiet, and I was like, wait a minute. And then you realize it's just because they have such good manners. They don't talk, they're
Yeah.
not on their phone. Like, I mean, they're just completely just engrossed in like what you're doing. So that was such a different thing. Like where you're so used to like, man, it shows. It's like I've played shows where people talk like louder than the band, and you're just like, hey,
Yeah.
can you like shut up? Like, I mean, I get it. Like, I'm not trying to be a tyrant, but like, can you keep it down or like
Yeah.
try to
It, it
play?
it feels like when in the past people went to shows to go see the band, and sometimes it seems in the recent future that a lot of people like go to socialize and the band's like the background music. You know, I went
Pretty
to a show one time where David, yeah, when he was playing with Key, just like stopped and it was at Casbah, stopped and just told somebody to shut up. He's just like, shut up. Just totally stopped. I was like, yeah, I love David. Yeah. I mean, he was saying what everybody was thinking, but I thought it was just great that he just decided to say, just stop talking because the guy was so loud. He was just obviously drunk and just
would
super
you?
loud.
Why would you spend money just to like talk through a whole show?
Do you think that times have just changed?
I think people's attention spans are like very short
Yeah.
because everything's about a little clip and a little this and a little that. And I think concerts are almost like it's like, oh hey, look, I'm at the concert. Like they don't even really care about the band. They're just like, look, I'm here.
Yeah.
Like it's like okay, like are you there to like just watch the band?
That's one thing you were talking about Japan and their politeness. And I remember I was at a couple of festivals in Japan and I was on side stage and just watching the crowd. And you didn't see everybody holding up phones or cameras or anything. They were in that moment.
Uh,
And I remember I was just crying, and like one of the guys came from the side. He's like, "Why are you crying?" I'm like, "It's really cool." I'm like, "Look at everybody; they're so into it. It's like really beautiful." I was just totally bawling, like, "You're so weird," but it really moved me that they were so into it. Whereas you see a lot of shows, and and I get it because people are trying to say, "Okay, I've been here," or even they want to share it with other people, and that's really cool. But I see so many people just at a show and they're just watching this instead of like watching the show. They're just watching their screen and it's different,
yeah,
you know?
like just try to be in the moment. I mean, it's cool if you want to take a couple little videos and photos, but don't just film the whole show.
Do you find it distracting when people are filming you? There's some bands that have like a don't film policy, don't, and some people I've seen some at some shows get like really angry about that. And it's like, what
Oh, I
that
mean,
seems so entitled.
I don't mind personally because I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm so focused on like the music. Like I don't really notice if somebody's taking photos and stuff, and that's fine,
Yeah.
because there's some good talented like photographers out there, and we use those photos, so it comes in handy. But I think yeah, that it doesn't. I'm so focused on like the band and try to keep everything together that I can't worry about like what people are doing and
On that note, I'll say that, and you know this, you are the person that I photograph the most.
Mhm.
Um, and and it's because you are so in that moment. So many pictures of you, that your facial expressions that you make, it makes me smile because you can see that you're really, really into that moment. And I was telling Desmond, I said, this is back in the day when uh, there, I think that I don't believe that smartphones were out. The iPhone wasn't released yet. Um, and not everybody had a DSLR. So it was just like me and this other photographer, Digger. And Digger had a different style of photography. So it was really cool because we'd always go to shows, and I think he was the same way. We just didn't like talking to people. So we could kind of use our camera as a shield to hide behind. But yeah, it was always fun photographing you. So I'm going to share some of these photos,
okay.
but I wanted to make sure people know that I'm not a creepy stalker of Jake, but he's so fun to photograph.
Those are some of my favorite. I think I shared one recently from back in those days.
Yeah, it's just and for the cover for uh this podcast episode, I was asking my son to look through all the pictures because he absolutely adores you. During before COVID, my son got a drum set, an electronic drum set, and Jake was making these great videos around the time of COVID and little break beats and stuff. And so my son was always getting excited, watching new clips and trying to learn some stuff during that time. That was a difficult time, COVID. Um, did you pick up in that adaptation that everybody kind of had to do during that time? Did you pick up different skills when it came to drumming?
It did. I learned how to like record myself because everyone was like, "Hey, we can still record just separately."
Yeah,
Because everyone just was like, "Oh, they're like, man." But I'm just saying, like, learning how to record like my like drums for people. Like,
yeah.
so people would send me like the song, and then I would just record drums and then send it back. So that was
I think.
cool.
What do you remember? What was the album? Like you said, you liked Billy Idol. You liked, Flock of Seagulls, which is kind of new wavy. Do you remember what was that one album though that was so different from everything that you'd been listening to? It was kind of like I can never go back. Like everything kind of changed.
Um, there's a lot, but I would say the one that stands out is Metallica Ride the Lightning. And that was like in a hate crate, so it had been out for a minute, and like
Yeah,
the Black Album hadn't come out yet. I mean, they were big, but
yeah,
they were huge at like when the Black Album dropped. So
yeah. I think they
I,
just had what Garage Days revisited.
I think it was
I
"And
think,
Justice for All" was the album before the Black
yeah,
Album.
yeah.
Um,
And that is a huge difference from Flock of Seagulls to Metallica.
yeah, it's like I mean, I seriously put that album on every night before I went to bed. Like I had the cassette. I would just put it on. Yeah, I'd probably be out cold after like the second song. But I don't know, there was
Yeah,
just something about that album. Just like I have certain things with music. I can be a little OCD. Like if I like a part in the song, I'll just like rewind it and just
yeah,
kind of like almost like a loop.
yeah,
Like in in hip hop, well, it's basically just a sample. It's like a loop.
yeah.
There'll be a section of a song that I just will like just keep going back to, and just like I get into these
Is there
OCD.
anything like that recently that you've listened to that you're like, oh, I really dig that?
Okay, so there's this guy named Les McCann. He was like a jazz pianist. He
Yeah,
died, I think, was it last year or earlier this year? And he has this album that's called Invitation to Openness, and it's basically three songs, but they're like super long. They're like 18, 19 minutes each. And there's a specific song on there where it's just like this break, and it's a drum break, but it has two drummers on it. And it almost sounds like jungle, like the stuff they're doing. And this is like the early 70s. So this is way ahead of it, just kind of by chance kind of has that sound. And then like
yeah,
I remember I had it on like a mixtape, and I just kept like rewinding it back. Probably
yeah.
wanted to think about just because of that. So
Yeah, sometimes I hear new music and I just hear a particular beat or something or how something's put together and I just keep playing it over and over because I'm like, oh, it's just a really good beat. Like I've been obsessed with an artist called Lola Young and
uh,
she's out of the UK and she's great beats on a lot of her stuff. I just keep listening to it. And it's cool because I remember listening to it not too long ago and my son came in and he just like started vibing with it. And he's like, who is that? I'm like, Lola Young. He's like, who is she? I'm like, UK. And he's like, pretty good. And then he just kind of vibed and walked out. And I was like, oh, that's cool. It was just like one of those moments. I love those kind of moments. So do you think that, um, do you have any like favorite new discoveries, whether they're somebody that is a new artist or just somebody that you recently discovered that you're like really down with?
Um, Probably the most current artist that I'm into is Jamie Olive. I know he's been around for a minute, but I
Yeah.
don't. A lot of new music. I'm sure there's some good bands out there, but I guess I would say I'm kind of stuck
Yeah.
in like the late '60s, early '70s
Yeah.
genre of like jazz and funk and like experimental music, like that band Can from Germany.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
listening to them like on the plane on the God, they're just so amazing and like they're just pretty much kind of jamming. There's not like a lot of structure to it, but it's just like the groove is so deep and they kind of have this like dissonance to it and like the way the guy sings, it's kind of like it's a little different. It's definitely not like pop music at all.
Yeah.
Um,
I think that's the great thing though about music is that it's kind of like the universe. It's ever expanding. There's always something to discover. There's always new stuff to hear, even if it's old stuff.
oh yeah,
Did you
me too.
find that um, during COVID, and it was a question that Mitch asked me, and I was like thinking about this recently, and I'm like, he said, did you find that during COVID that you were listening to a lot more music? Because he said that he'd kind of stopped, and I'd kind of maybe stopped beforehand, but probably the same reason, just kids, life, whatever. But then during COVID, started listening to music a lot more. And I was getting a lot of different suggestions off, the platforms I was listening to. And I discovered a lot of new bands and a lot of old bands that were indie bands that had been around for a while. And it's like, oh, this is really, really cool stuff. And I, like you, get obsessed with stuff. And I'm like, I'm just going to keep playing these bands. Do you still find it exciting when you discover kind of like new music? And do you still kind of get obsessive over it?
Oh yeah, for sure. Music's just one of those things. It just gets endless. Like
Yeah.
you could never listen to it all. There's just you just don't. There's not enough time in the day to like when I had COVID back last year,
Yeah.
and I was like, you know what? Because I was stuck in my room. Basically, I was like, you know what? There's so many albums that I've never actually like listened to. Yeah, I have Apple Music, so I'm like, let's check this album out. Let's. I wonder. I've never really listened to this one that much. Like, I guess it was a good chance just to sit here and kind of vibe out. And it was Miles Davis
Nice.
live at the Fillmore East.
That's a great album.
It's just incredible. It's
Those
all
jazz albums, you can't go wrong.
but it's like it's jazz, but it's like the way they're playing. It has like this kind of like punk rock like energy to it. Like it's not all sweet and like it's like
Yeah.
very aggressive. Like this is like the early '70s, so fusion was kind of coming in. So rock and jazz kind of were married together, which is fusion. And
Yeah.
just the way they're playing is just, I mean, they're just going for it. Like
Yeah.
they're just pushing, pushing it. And it's just
I
so
remember
cool.
the first time I heard Bitches Brew,
Oh,
and
I remember. Let me hear
I,
how
I,
your experience.
I think I was probably about 15 or 16 when I heard it. And at that time, I was really obsessed with, I just not too many years before discovered, Depeche Mode. So I was into this whole Depeche Mode, Echo and the Bunnymen.
Uh-huh.
And then somehow my dad really loved the old standards. So he had Nat King Cole. So finally, we got a second CD after Phil Collins. We just had Phil Collins forever. It was just like one CD, and parents weren't going to buy any more CDs because they're like, it's $39. And remember, they used to have this like gigantic plastic thing. So you didn't steal the CD, and it probably, I don't know, you could have made a car with the plastic enclosure that the CDs came in, but they were so expensive. But the second one we got was like Nat King Cole. And so going down that, then you start going down other things. And I ended up finally arriving at Miles Davis.
Oh,
And then when I finally heard Bitches Brew, it, I just remember kind of sitting there really just kind of incredulous, shocked. I didn't understand what I was listening to, and I'd listened to it again, and it was one of those things I remember just laying in my bed, staring up at the time I still had popcorn ceiling. So staring at all the different shadows the popcorn ceiling would make and just listening to that album and just almost like in a trance, you know?
yeah. I mean, when I think I heard that album like about around the same time, like age as you,
Yeah.
and I mean, I definitely didn't get it yet. Like, it was way too abstract for me, coming from like my background. But then when I re-listened to it, like I think they put out like a box set about like
Yeah.
20 years ago, and I bought that. I remember I was on the road, and I bought like they had it used. So I'm like, dude, I'm buying this thing, because
Yeah.
I was really obsessed with all that stuff at that time. I still
Yeah.
am, but like then, and I think I remember the other guys in the band. They were like, I think like Amnesiac maybe had just, so they were just all. I mean, Radiohead's great, but like
Yeah.
I was like, guys, I don't know if you understand, but that Radiohead's influenced this album. Like, I don't know if you know this, but like
Yeah.
they've mentioned in interviews that they're influenced by like Bitch and Brew and shit. And like, it's cool if they were into like the indie rock stuff. It's just fine.
Yeah.
So, but I was into that. I just thought that was, I've listened to them a lot.
Yeah.
It, I almost hear new things every time I listen to it because there's so many layers going on. You're just like, oh,
Yeah.
I never really noticed that.
I always feel like that listening to that, it's almost like being enchanted because you're always listening to different things. But also, I just remember thinking, wow, there's parts of it that musically feel aggressive in a way, but not aggressive like that you would think like thrash metal bands, but aggressive in the attack of the sound,
Right, right.
which I never, had experienced. And it just kind of blew me away because there was the nice jazz and stuff. I mean, prior to listening to that kind of jazz, we had neighbors that were like next door that listened to the smooth jazz in San Diego. I can't remember what station it was. It was like maybe 96.5, the smooth jazz.
Yeah.
And so to hear that, and you'd hear, oh, that's jazz, and then to hear something like Bitches Brew, it's like you said, I couldn't really comprehend it. And I just remember playing it, not understanding what I'm listening to, but being enchanted, absolutely enchanted by it. It felt like being under a spell.
Does this light
Desmond.
look better? I got one of these
Oh, it
little
looks
lights.
great.
Does it
Yeah,
look,
that looks great.
does it seem like it
Yeah.
might have been too dark?
Yeah, it looks great. Desmond. He is my audio. You were talking about not being good at audio stuff, and obviously I'm not good at audio stuff. I keep ruining each recording.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Desmond spends hours trying to fix it. And then after he does, I'm like, I still don't like it. Let's scrap it all. I don't know why he's my friend.
Me too.
He's a good friend. Hey, Desmond.
Hi. I'm quite interested in your learning of the drums, Jake. Could you tell me a bit more about that? No, because you said you learnt at school, and you said you were finding out about the music scene, and then you were listening to In Excess, Billy Idol, Metallica. How did
Mhm.
all those three things come together and make you the drummer you are?
I mean, so my older brother played drums, so he was like a big influence on me, and I guess I've just always had an eclectic musical taste. Yeah, I guess I've just always had an eclectic musical taste. So I kind of mix all those things together, maybe.
Yeah.
That I'm pretty much like self-taught. My brother showed me a few things, but not really. I'll just say I'm more of a visual kind of like learner, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
If I can see it, like I can understand it.
Okay.
Uh,
So when you were listening to, let's say, Kick by In Excess,
uh,
did you have that on your headphones and you were playing along, or
well,
would
at
you
that
try
time,
and
no,
play along to these things?
I wasn't playing drums at that time. In
Okay.
'87, no, I wasn't jamming the NXS kick.
Okay.
Um, if that makes, if that clarifies at all. But
Yes, I just had these visions of you with a Sony Walkman playing along to In
oh yeah,
Excess and Flock of Seagulls, and then the next day, right, Metallica today.
I mean, wish I had started sooner, honestly. But
Yeah.
it
And
is
how
what
much
it is.
yeah, and how much of an influence did your brother have on you? Did you want to be like him, or did you want to be better than him?
I mean, he's definitely just been an influence, just as my brother, and just the fact that he plays drums and he's so good. Like I've never felt like it was like a competition, really. Like we just both play the same instrument, and
Yeah.
I think we're different enough. I mean, I'm definitely like, if I play the kind of music that he plays, I get compared to him. But I mean, I've done so many other different things that he doesn't usually do. So I mean, that's what like kind of makes us different.
Yeah.
I do more rock kind of stuff.
Yeah. The reason I asked was I have siblings, and it can be quite competitive.
Oh well, yeah.
um,
There's a little competition there, but it's always just been friendly. I mean, he's been very supportive of me like since I started. He's always helped me out. And, he'd have like there was this reggae band, and he was like, "You should have my brother play," because he was like too busy. So just getting to meet people and like just getting opportunities like that where you just like you get a shot because of that. And yeah, I mean it's been pretty much good for the most part.
do you ever play with other drummers? I know it's quite rare to have two drummers in a band, but I'm thinking
Um,
of like Genesis often have two drummers playing, and Adam and the
I'm,
Ants, which was a,
oh,
a very powerful sound the first time I heard Adam and the Ants. They've got two drummers playing, and it's almost tribal. Do you ever play with other drummers?
well, like in Surefire, we have a percussionist. Like he's not playing like set. He's just playing like congas and bongos and tambourine and like cowbells and stuff. I always thought it would be cool to have a band with two drummers, and maybe I'll do that. I think it would be cool if I could find the right person that would mesh with like
Would that be
what
hard to do? Like, because you've got,
No, I mean not necessarily, but like I mean I would probably take the more simple role, and then they could just do more of those like flashy, fills and more of the. I'd be okay with just being more like the backbone of the thing.
you've seen uh, Jimmy Chamberlain set up. They've got these
Dude,
huge, huge setups. Have you ever had like made a big setup like that?
I think the biggest kit I ever did was like I think it might have been like a 6-piece, so like two toms on top, two like floor toms. I think I had like 4 or 5 cymbals. It was like a Dave Matthews like cover band. So I couldn't get away with like my usual stuff. Like I had to have like all the extra toys, just to like
How much harder is it to play with so many more options?
I wouldn't say it's harder. I think the reason why I do the setup I do is so I won't like do too much, because I think if there's a lot of drums in front of me, like I'll want to play them. So
Yeah,
the reason why I keep my set very like economical is it kind of like keeps me a little more disciplined, I would
yeah,
say. Like,
yeah,
because drums are fun. If there's more drums, you want to play them.
yeah.
And
When
I'm a
when I had my son's kit set up downstairs. Pretty much everybody that came over, my cousins, my friends, everybody wanted to play them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody likes drums, How could you not?
Do you play any other instruments?
I mess around with, I have a bass that I mess around with sometimes, but I don't practice like I should I can play a few little things, like I can hammer out a couple riffs, and I'm a frustrated piano player. Like, I really wish I could play that,
Yeah.
but I just can't quite get. I have the
It's
rhythm.
funny.
It's just not I don't know, the chords and all that stuff. I have no idea, but like I can make stuff up on it. It's just
Yeah.
I don't really know what I'm doing.
It's funny because that's the one thing that a lot of guitarist musicians I know, they all say, I wish I could play the piano. They're like, we could work it out, play by ear, but they want the whole discipline of doing the chords and doing everything and it just coming naturally. So I understand. I don't play the piano either. I can play by ear, but just not the disciplined way, not like Fiona Apple way,
Sure.
and not the Jane Lou way. I'm going to just shout out Jane Lou because I love her. She's a San Diego artist as well. I
I
think you've played with her,
yeah.
right? You've
What's
played
that?
with her before. You've
I've
played with
played
Jane Lou before.
a record she put out like 10 years ago, maybe.
So I think about like maybe 15 or 16 years ago, I watched this documentary one time and it was on Tibet and it was about these children that were sent over the Himalayas, like just a group of children, and they'd gone to, live in this orphanage in India. Their parents had told them to escape. And so I remember thinking, God, that's crazy. That's like so crazy. They're away from their families. They don't have anything. And I remember calling up just random people and saying, I want to put on a benefit show and raise money for these kids. And I called up Tim and I said, can I put on a benefit show, for Tibet at the Casbah? And he was like, yeah, totally. But Jane was, she was one of the people that performed at the first benefit show that I did.
Oh,
So that
nice.
was really cool. Yeah, she was like really awesome. She played in the Atari room, but I think she's a great artist.
Yes.
Do you have a favorite drummer? I know that's hard for drummers to pick, but do you have favorite drummers that just kind of blew you away when you were young or even now?
So like John Bonham, Led Zeppelin, pretty big influence on me just because I think just it's him when he plays. Like he just has a distinct, unique thing about the way he plays. And it's,
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many drummers. I mean, we could sit
So
here.
many great drummers. Yeah. Neil Peart.
Neil
I mean,
Peart.
the big ones for me, I remember, and I say that they're big for me in terms of drumming was I would hear a song, I'd hear Tom Sawyer. Like, whoa. I felt like I was on some kind of a musical trip on
Yeah.
that. Then going and listening to Danny Carey and Tool and
Yeah.
hearing that was kind of one of those experiences. I remember the first time I heard Tool, I was in a car, somebody gave me a CD, I listened to it and just sitting there turning it up more and more and more just because I wanted to feel that experience, but because it was incredible to me. It wasn't anything that I had heard prior
Yeah.
to that. And so drumming is really something to me that I love listening to. And that's why I love listening to you.
Thank you.
And it's been great because you've been into so many different things. Do you have a favorite style of playing? Because I've listened to you do jazzy kind of stuff. I've listened to you do poppy stuff. I've listened to you do hard, rock kind of stuff. Is there a particular style or doesn't matter? You just love playing?
I think if the songs are good, it doesn't matter the style or genre.
Yeah.
I think my heart is more in like soul, funk, kind of
Yeah.
stuff. But I mean, I love playing I do like this cover band. They do like,
Yeah.
it's fun to just play those songs,
Yeah.
I've done a little more jazz lately. And I have some friends in LA that I play with occasionally, and that's really fun.
I think it just boils down to the people, right? The company and the energy you're
Yeah, I mean
around.
that has a lot. That makes a huge difference.
I think for bands, even for, I mean, I think that if you have that kind of energy in a band, I think that that alone can take a band much farther than just having really capable, good
I
musicians
mean that's
without
how
that energy.
it's like it's the that people can get along. You're gonna you're gonna last a little longer if you got a bunch of talented guys, but they're all just kind of jerks. I mean, that's why a lot of bands they don't laugh
Yeah,
because they
which is
just
unfortunate.
unfortunate, but the ego or just the different personalities or whatever the issue is, just tends to it can kill a band just
Yeah,
because music is like such a small part of like being in a band. You have to be
yeah,
around the people, especially if you travel.
yeah.
You're in close quarters with people. I mean, you gotta enjoy their company. Otherwise, it can be really uncomfortable.
Right, I'm going to
So,
put you on the spot, Jake. I've
Okay,
got an interesting question for you.
okay.
Um, let's imagine you get a phone call from Coachella or from Glastonbury or from the Casbah, and they say, "Right, we want you on drums, Jake. You can choose your own band and you can play two songs. Who are you choosing, and what are the two songs?"
Oh wow! So it's any band I want. You're saying?
Yeah, anyone you want,
Gee.
either living or past. Now, are they famous or not famous? It can be anyone you choose.
Well, let's see here.
that's a great question.
Man,
It's a tough one, though.
It is a tough one. Who
jeez.
he can play with whoever he wants to play with and play whatever
Yep,
song he wants to
But
play.
only two
That's a great question.
songs?
only two songs. I was going to say one, but I thought that's even more difficult, so I'm saying two. I
Man,
think I've broken you.
I don't know. It's like, geez, what direction do I want to go?
I think that's the beauty of music. The answer you give today, if you give one, will be different to yesterday and different to tomorrow.
I feel Jake, I feel like you would knowing you, I feel like you would go into that jazz, that kind of jazz thing. Like I could see you with Miles and all of them. I would see you there. I could totally see you
Like
there.
either that or like Herbie
Oh,
Hancock.
yeah.
I think yeah, either Miles or Herbie or both because they were in the band together. Oh, one band that I did audition for back in the day was Helmet,
Oh, wow. I love Helmet.
and that was pretty cool. Like I didn't get the gig, but I met Paige like in Hollywood, and it was just me and him. Like he was like putting together a whole new band.
Yeah.
And so like he told me what songs to learn, which was like some old ones and then some new ones. It was just me and him in like a practice room in Hollywood.
That brings up such great memories because I just remember it like uh the kind of just before the mid 90s, just like driving around San Diego, and Ron, my show friend, the one that introduced me to like shot out hoods and stuff, and Primus, also giving me like Helmet. And I remember listening to Unsung and being like, okay, this is cool. Like I dig it. I like it. This is
Mhm.
awesome. There's such
Yeah.
a great music. Do you think that, and it's hard because I have a son now and I listen to the stuff that, is out there that he's exposed to and he listens to. Do you think that we're having some, the 70s had so much great music. 80s had a lot of great music. The 90s had a lot of great music. Do you think with all the electronic, the AI and everything that's going on that we're going to in the future have that same quality of music that we've had in the past? Like good songs, like good written songs, and not like songs created in AI or songs, voices and everything changed, where it's like just really a good song.
I mean, I hope so. I mean,
Yeah.
I think
It's hard to tell.
it's hard to tell. I want to say, like, hopefully, yes. You know,
Yeah.
I feel like there's always going to be somebody out there that can write. Maybe not as many, but there'll always be a handful of people that can still crank out with good songs, you know. So,
Yeah. A lot of bands, Dewey Defeats Truman was a San Diego band, and they've just recently put out some new music, and they've probably, I would think, got better reviews now than maybe that they did back in the day, which is really, really cool. So it's
mhm.
nice to see lot of bands coming out maybe after there was a hiatus. Ride came out with a new album recently, and they had a hiatus for a while. So it's exciting to me to see some of these older bands, especially bands that I love and loved, when I was young, to still see them working and still putting out music. So that's really exciting. I hope that you will continue to keep working and putting out music, because I can't imagine the music without Jake Najor contributing to it. Because, like I said, you're in everything, helping with everything. You're the guy that people call when they're in a bind and can't
Mhm.
do anything. And I think it's not just a testament to who you are as a person, um, uh, but also your skill, but also your vibe. I think that people just love you. One of the biggest things that you always hear people talk about when it's in regards to you is just how chill, how cool Jake is.
Yeah.
Um, and that's awesome. Like, not everybody, like, I don't know if people would say that about Desmond or me.
I would like to say thank you to Jake for coming back and doing this again. And I think that
First,
that sh-
man.
that shows your character as well. No, there was no hesitation. It was, yeah, let's redo it.
Yeah. It's
It
all,
wasn't a, why did you mess it up the first time? I'm not doing it again, which
no.
it could have been, and it would
Yeah, a
have
lot of
been from a
people could
lot
have
of
been
people. Yeah.
totally not cool about it, and it was my fault. And Jake's original vocals were awesome. The audio was awesome. I could still release parts of that. It was just the the back and forth conversation that was
Yeah.
messed up, and it was all my fault. But I'm
Yeah.
getting better.
I found it very interesting during the conversation with Jake that the part under the bridge. I knew you were going to ask that question, and I was dreading Jake saying, "No, that wasn't me." So I'm so happy that he said yes, that was me. And I don't know this bridge in San Diego, but now I have this image in my mind of a happy Jake playing drums under the bridge, people driving past in convertibles all waving and honking, and Jake managing to wave back between drumming. But I really didn't want you to ask that question, because if Jake said no, I think not only myself but so many people would have been deflated by it. And
She's just kind of
I
disappointed.
yeah, because that image would just be gone. And but now it's even better, because now I imagine like 5 or 6 drummers all there drumming under the bridge, and just this mass community of drummers. I was going to interrupt you and say, Jake, please do not answer. Um, and I was going to use a line from a movie, which is a movie you should have seen but you haven't, and I've recommended it. Um, Tell me your top 3 bands ever.
What do you mean, my top three bands?
Well, your favorite 3 bands. If you could only listen to 3 bands, who would it be?
Oh, I don't do these questions.
No, no, but you've told me before one of your top bands. What?
Okay, Joy Division. I love Joy Division.
Right, stop there. This movie is about Joy Division, 24-hour party people. It's
Oh yeah,
about,
I haven't seen it.
yeah, watch it. It's about the Manchester scene. So it starts with the Sex Pistols playing in Manchester, and the New Order Joy Division collective going to watch them and starting their own band. and then there is the guy who decides to make money from it and start a record company. And in this movie, one of the last lines is, if you have to choose between the legend and the truth, always print the legend. And I was going to say that to Jake, because if the answer was no, we could always think it was true that Jake was under this bridge drumming.
I think it's cool though that it's an urban legend. That's true. And he said he's going to find a photo.
Yeah, but if it, you know what I mean, though. If he
Yeah.
said no, that would have just been, like drinking a cup of cold vomit. It would have been. Oh, so I'm glad. I'm relieved.
Were you going to
And
cut it if he said no? Were we going to have to? Were you going to invoke your veto rights?
I was, and I was biting my tongue, and I was going to interrupt and say, Jake, please do not answer, just on the small chance that the answer was no, and that all these hearts would be broken.
I love that it was Jake though too, because I think that if you saw Jake is whenever he's playing, I love it. He's always smiling. He's always in that moment. So if you were to drive by and to see that, I think it would make somebody smile, make somebody happy, and that's the great thing about music. I am so blessed because like when I had this crazy idea to do this, and I talked to my friends about it, I talked to Anuj and I talked to you about it. You were like, whatever you need, there to help. Um, and you've been true to your word. And I've had like a lot of friends say the same thing, like whatever you need, I'm there to help, which is really cool. Nobody ever said, what on earth are you doing? Well, my mom
Yeah, mom.
said that. My mom will say that always. But, I love her. She's 80. She's retired. She lives next door. But
She
what's so
doesn't
funny is
really
that she
though.
doesn't understand this kind of stuff, but yet she is quite good at social media. Like she posts stuff and like she's a photographer and she does floral and fauna photography. She's got a couple of books on floral and fauna photography. And I remember I told her the other day, I'm like, oh, like I just got some statistic back and there was like 1,500 listens. And I'm like, for a podcast that had like really not any kind of advertisement or really anything about it, right? It's just kind of like popped up overnight. And she's like, I've got almost 2,000 followers. I'm like, yeah, but you've had people for like a long time. She's like, how many followers do you have? I'm like, none, but I have listens. And she's like, that's not very successful, is it? Yeah, but people are listening. She's like, I don't understand it. She's like, they'll get bored of listening to you talk. Like, okay. I think that kind of balance so works. Like Marty, my best friend. The other thing I love about my friends is that they're super authentic, and nobody is afraid to tell me anything. Like if something's not working or something's terrible, like Marty will tell me that's idea is just nuts. He's the first person like, don't do that. And I
Yeah.
appreciate that. I appreciate friends that tell me, yeah, don't do that. Like not in a discouraging way, but like, think about it. You've told me stuff, like I've asked you and stuff for advice on things that sometimes I know my personality is I react. I just kind of react. If there's something coming at me that I don't want to hear and I can suspect, because I think that I can sometimes kind of read people like, and I think that something's going to come at me that I don't want to hear. I think I've done it to you, like put up my hands and like,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
not now.
Yeah.
Can't deal with it now. Not that I won't ever deal with it, but I also think that it takes good friends to put up with that or understand that. Because I think that some people would, I don't think that I'm an easy friend.
That sounds like a Nirvana song.
You could at any moment have said, no, of course you're an easy, you said nothing.
Deliberately.
I don't think, yeah, I don't think that I'm a bad friend. I just don't, I could, I don't think that I'm a bad friend.
No, you're
I
not a
think
bad
that I'm
friend.
not an
But
easy
yeah, I
friend.
spoke quickly then. You're not a bad friend. What was that other
I
bit? Easy? I don't
I
really
don't
know.
think that I'm an easy friend.
Okay.
I don't think that I'm good at communication.
And that's why
And
you're
and
doing a
when I say that I'm
podcast.
not good in communication, I mean like I don't partake in social media a lot. I don't turn on notifications of my phone. I don't turn on notifications for apps and messaging. I don't answer calls. I don't turn on a ringer. I don't turn on vibrate. In that sense, it's really hard pressed if there's an emergency situation. I'll be honest. It's if there's an emergency situation, you should call my son. That's how you should get a hold of me. Or send smoke signals
Yeah, or a pigeon.
or a pigeon. I'm gonna be the Mike Tyson of my hood. Um, so in that sense, I think that I'm terrible because if somebody texts me something, it could be up to 2 weeks before I read it, and it's just because I really don't like it. I don't like the phone.
Yeah, and I think by extension, society.
Yeah, I think that I'm overwhelmed. I think it's not that I don't like society. I think that I get overwhelmed by society. That's all. I'm just very overwhelmed. I think
Yeah,
that people, maybe it's just my experiences. I think that there was people were more reserved 30 years ago. Um,
yeah. There wasn't this need for immediate gratification or immediate response. It's too easy to communicate now that it's become overwhelming.
yeah,
Not everything. This goes back to what Jake was saying. When you're at a concert, yeah, take a couple of pictures,
yeah,
but don't just stand there and film it and then talk to your friends.
yeah.
And there is a
Like
difference.
the whole time just filming it. It's like
Yeah,
you're missing the experience.
yeah,
You're sure you're getting it on video, but you're missing that actual experience.
yeah. It's like you're watching it secondhand because it's right there in front of you, but it's coming through a phone. And really, it needs to be just put your phone down, use your eyes.
Yeah,
The first concerts I went to, this was before mobile phones, and cameras were too big to take into concerts, and they weren't
yeah,
allowed at most concerts.
yeah.
No, you'd have it taken off you, so you listened to the music, you got involved in what was happening.
But that would seem to me to be the whole reason to go.
Yeah, but I think times are changing, and that's part of the reason still, but that's been diminished. And the part of Jake mentioned it was, look, this is where I am. It's very self-centered. It's not, this is where I am. It should be, this is what I'm watching.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and you asked Jake, does that distract you? It's like, no, because I'm just doing my thing on the drums.
yeah.
And if the people in the crowd were doing that too, thinking, right, I'm here for the music, I'm just so involved in this,
Hmm.
it would be a different atmosphere.
Yeah. It gets me riled up sometimes. I'm not going to lie. Like I've gone to shows and people are yapping. And
Yeah,
sometimes it could be the venue too. Like I found venues in LA, there was more yappers. Um, in the Casbah in San Diego, it's like 250 capacity. Generally, the crowds are pretty chilled. Like it's usually a lot of the same people that love music that come out to see all the bands. So they're usually generally pretty respectful. But I've gone to, yeah, so many shows where people are yapping and I'm annoyed, but not so much for me. I'm annoyed for the band because I'm thinking
yeah,
they're here, performing for everybody. And a lot of people came and bought tickets. I think I'm annoyed for the people that bought tickets. It's not like me being annoyed, like it's ruining my experience. I'm kind of more annoyed at you're kind of ruining everybody's experience with your yapping.
yeah. And the concert is just the culmination. It's gone through the writing process. It's gone through hours and hours of practice and rehearsal. And I'm guessing a lot of those musicians on stage are quite nervous or quite enthusiastic or they're just 100% committed to giving
Yeah.
the best show they can every night.
Yeah.
And then to have people disrespect that is sad.
I think it would be so difficult to be a musician because you're trying to do something, you're trying to create art, put something out there in the world that other people can enjoy, people can love. And like you hear it from every musician, like even Mitch was saying, like he's played places where people have said, you get off the stage or stop playing because we're playing pool. I've heard, artists get heckled, like good artists, not like bad artists. Like I've gone to a Juliana Hatfield concert and somebody's heckled her and she's literally grabbed money out of her pocket and said, "How much did you pay for the ticket here?"
Yeah.
$18. Here's your $18. Just go. I don't want to go. We all want you to go now. Everybody wants you to go. The crowd's like clapping. They want him to go.
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't get that. I just don't get that. I couldn't do it. I have too thin skin. I'd probably cry. Like, why do you hate me? Like, why didn't you like me? I'm just trying to do something nice. Like I just cry. So, so I do this, right? And I'm sure, like anything that anybody said to me on here though, like I know it. I know that I say whoa a lot and I'm working on correcting that.
That's
Um
not a bad thing.
it was pretty, I think that I was annoyed with myself at certain points of the number of times I said whoa. There's probably going to be some clip sometime. Probably my son's going to make it. It's going to be a reel where it's just all the times I say whoa.
He might
Just
make it
whoa,
into a
whoa,
song.
whoa.
That'd be quite
Right?
talented if he could
Right?
make a melody out of the woes. Yeah.
All right. I hope that everybody enjoyed the episode. And I'm going to be recording. Should I do some teasers? No, I'll just keep it under wraps. It'll be a surprise. I do have, there's so much stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
It'll be next time. So,
Correct.
and hopefully it won't be as long as it took to get out these episodes. They've been completely out of order just because of it. But like I said, getting better.
We're striving for perfection to do justice for the guests.
Yeah, I am. I didn't realize I was such a perfectionist until my son's like, you're a perfectionist. Because I was explaining to him, he's like, why didn't Jake's thing, air? And I explained to him why, and I said, I re-recorded the track because my track was bad. But then when we put them together, it sounded perfect. It sounded flawless. Desmond worked so hard on it, but I knew that my conversation didn't happen at the same time as Desmond and Jake's, even though it was word for word, like the same thing. I just knew. That's why it's really cool that you understand that. And that's a good friend that I could come to you and say, yeah, but I know. And you're not like, ugh, why do I work for free for you? That you were just like, no, I get it. Well, and you just said, okay, we'll redo it. No problem. So thank you. Thank you to Jake again for just being super cool and re-recording this because his vocals were flawless. So were Desmond's. Just me. It'll get better. All right. Sayonara.
Sayonara, cupcake.